Hey, welcome to a new episode of the Fancast Comic Forum. This is Darren. This is episode 2. And this week we're going to talk about some new developments from comic publishers, as well as a couple of quick reviews of some comics that came out this week that I think you should check out. So let's start off with the first publisher that I want to talk about. That would be DC Comics. Now, DC Comics is launching a new imprint featuring some of the best writers and artists in the industry working on some standalone stories featuring their iconic characters. Now, according to co-publisher Jim Lee, the company is looking to the critically acclaimed best-selling books that were often out of continuity, and he invoked legendary writer and artist Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns in his statement. You can see Frank right there. Now, the all-star lineup of talent that they have cultivated for this new imprint has some interesting new books in the works. Now, speaking of Frank Miller, Superman Year One will be written by Frank Miller with art by John Romita Jr. And in honor of the 80th anniversary of the character, now this new retelling of the Man of Steel's origin will feature some new revelations that will reframe some of the classic moments, including his exile from Krypton, his childhood in Kansas, and his rise to becoming a hero. Now, Batman Last Night on Earth is one I'm really looking forward to, because this is going to reteam a former Batman and current Dark Knight's Metal team of writer Scott Snyder and artist Greg Capullo. Scott Snyder has talked to me before about writing the final Batman story, and it looks like this might be it, as Batman wakes up in the desert with no memory of what the year is or how he ended up with the severed head of the Joker alive in a jar next to him. So as he attempts to navigate an unknown future, he finds out that the villains have triumphed and that society has shed all ethical codes. Now, he must find answers while trying to survive what's being called the last Batman story ever told. So that's definitely ominous and exciting at the same time. Now, next, Batman Damned is from the team of Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo, and I apologize if I get any of the names wrong. I respect all of you creators, and I love comics, so I'm doing the best I can. Now, in this dark story, a body is found in Gotham City, and a body everyone insists is a Joker. Now, we're kind of seeing a theme, especially with both comics, that the Joker being dead. Now, unfortunately, Joker's death seems to open up a new series of supernatural problems that have Batman teaming up with John Constantine to track down a series of clues and mystical hints to the killer's identity. Now, this is an investigation that's going to test Batman's sanity as he faces supernatural horrors like throughout Gotham. Now, the next story is Wonder Woman Historia. Now, this features an epic tale of the lost history of the Amazons and the rise of Queen Hippolyta to power. Now, this is going to be a 3-book saga written by Kelly Sue DeConnick with art by Phil Jimenez. And it's going to span the history of Paradise Island and the Amazons, from their inception to the arrival of the first man on their shore. So it's going to span from the creation of Paradise Island to the moment that Steve Trevor arrives there. Now, the next title is currently in the working title stages, but it's being tentatively called Wonder Woman, Diana's Daughter. Now, this isn't the art from it. It's just art from another Greg Rucka comic, but it's going to be written by Greg Rucka. Now, this story is going to take place 20 years after the last sighting of Diana, and the powers that have risen to fill the vacuum left by her absence have kept the people of the world under their thumb. Now, this book focuses on a young woman who's a member of a scattered resistance who is determined to help. And during her journey, she learns the truth about herself and her destiny. Now, the next book is going to be written by John Ridley, who's an Academy Award-winning Emmy Award nominated writer of 12 Years a Slave. Sorry, I'm a little flustered. Um, but John Ridley's going to write The Other History of the DC Universe. Now, the series is going to analyze iconic moments in the history of the DC Universe and chart socio-political gains through the perspective of DC superheroes from marginalized and historically disenfranchised groups. So it's going to focus on the lives of these heroes outside of their costumes and how they deal with real world issues. So it's going to feature heroes like Vixen, Katana, Renee Montoya, and one of my favorite heroes, Jon Stewart. Now, with that being said, we got let's get to Marvel Comics. Now, Marvel Comics is rolling out new beginnings for many of its iconic characters with new creative teams. There's going to be post-Legacy, and they're starting with new #1 issues. And this is according to executive editor Tom Brevoort. Now, Avengers #1 is going to bring back the core 3 founding Avengers of Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Thor, Odin's son. Along with a new team that consists of Captain Marvel, Black Panther, She-Hulk, Ghost Rider, and Doctor Strange in a temporary position on the team. As a position that's going to change periodically depending on the mission. Now, Avengers are going to take on the threat teased in the beginning of Legacy with Odin's Avengers team as the new team takes on the Celestials. Now, Avengers #1 is going to be written by Jason Aaron with art by Ed McGuinness. Now, Doctor Strange writer Donny Cates is going to take on Venom #1 with artist Ryan Stegman. In this story, a primordial evil is awakened beneath New York, and Venom's role as a lethal protector is at stake, as this new threat could force Venom to give up everything, including Eddie Brock. Now, Jeff Lemire and Kim Jacinto are going to provide the words and art for The Sentry #1. Now, one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe is back, and he finds himself back in his mundane life by day and soaring the skies at night to defend the innocent. But if you know anything about the hero, about Sentry himself, how much of this is real and how much of it is a manifestation of his troubled mind? I think there's going to be some really interesting, some really cool territory for Lemire to explore. Now, the Amazing Spider-Man writer Dan Slott and artist Valerio Schiti will take on the Ultimate Futurist himself with Tony Stark, Iron Man #1. So with that, Nick Spencer is going to take over writing the Amazing Spider-Man #1 with Ryan Otley doing the art. Now, this series promises some big changes for the wall crawler that include an alien invasion that only Spider-Man can stop, a revelation from the past that threatens Peter's job, relationships, and life, a new roommate, new love interests, and a brand new villain to test his limits. Now, on that note, let's go on to reviews of some comics that have already come out that I've read that I really enjoyed. And the first one's going to be Captain America #699. This is written by Mark Waid with art by Chris Samney. Now, Steve Rogers is still stuck in the future, and he and the Resistance are going after Babington and his regime. He comes across an old friend whose rage is being used to keep him as an enforcer, and you know the cover doesn't bury the lead. It's the Hulk, so he is definitely fighting the Hulk. Now, after freeing his old friend, he finds another hero being used by the new leaders of the country. Now, this is a great issue, and it continues to build to something huge for Steve, and I hope it continues this momentum of keeping this specific kind of characterization of Steve for a while, and I really want to see what this rolls into for issue 700. The next one's going to be Amazing Spider-Man #797. Now, Dan Slott and Stuart Eminem, they continue to bring some great drama and tension to this book, and I love what they're doing with this current storyline. Now, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are still dealing with their feelings for each other versus, the current state of their lives. Now, that's a storyline, I would like some resolution on at some point, because I'm kind of tired of being teased with it, over and over again since one fine day, one last day. But the biggest thing about this issue is the tension that permeates with Norman Osborn, because Norman Osborn has kidnapped someone and he wants answers, and it seems like he wants some missing piece that he just can't seem to get, like something that he can't seem to remember, and that's going to be that's an interesting journey, especially once he finally puts that missing piece in place. Now, Tom King continues his Poison Ivy takes over the world storyline in Batman number 42, and he takes it even further as Batman and Catwoman deal with the fact that they are the only two people on the planet who are unaffected by what Ivy has done. And what this has done is leads to some pretty kind of fun dialogue between the two of them as they have to deal with an entire world that's against them while they're still planning their wedding, especially having Ivy watching over them like through the eyes of everyone, including Superman. So that's it for this week's Fancast Comic Forum. Now, if you like this episode, please subscribe. You can find us every week on YouTube at us. Just search for Superpowered Fancast and subscribe. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/superpoweredfancast. You can always find me on Twitter. You can find like news and reviews and articles like this and all kind of comic book goodness on superpoweredfancast.com. You can also always follow me on Twitter at superpoweredfan, and you can read my other like news items and comic book reviews on the Geeks Worldwide at www.thegww.com. So for Fancast Comic Forum, this is Darren saying, I'll see you next week.